$100 million movie with, and you're shooting principal photography with lenses that have never really been shot. I don't even remember when we first met. I mean, I came to Panavision pretty early. I remember my first movie that was Panavision was Poison Ivy, and it was the Primos had just come out. So I don't even know what year that was, but probably 90. I had never even used a zoom before because I only had my one set of size super speeds. That's what we did all the movies with. I first started shooting Panavision glass and of course loved those Primos, and also really loved, first time I embraced the zoom, I always felt like a zoom is not, but that 17 to 70, right? It was,
right, the Primo 4:1.
4:1 was just great, it was fast. And then my first Anamorphic show, I was doing a Wim Wenders movie called $1 Million Hotel. So that's my first exposure to the C series, the first time. And this was really where I was exploring with different glass and discovering characteristics about him I liked.
I mean, you've always been around like Mouse Hunt. You just had this kind of rock and roll stature about you, because I mean, Phedon was the $1 million looking DP. I never really dealt with them, but the show that really stuck in my head where Phedon and I really started to work together was Walk the Line. She really wanted to simulate this kind of vintage concert, and we made those special filters for you.
That's right.
And then we started really associating ourselves much more. And then obviously Nebraska's when you threw the black and white card, and that's when we really started playing with your Love of C series, and we just started getting into the expansion because that was the open gate mini, and you wanted to use as much of that area as you could. And that was kind of a primer of what was going to happen with the Ford versus Ferrari. But honestly, I've always known of you, but really wasn't until Walk the Line. In hindsight, if we think about a lot of the collaboration we had, it was almost a practice for us for what we're doing now, where pretty much every lens, we kind of do a custom adjustment.
We were kind of doing things that later became the trend, which is, using older glass, and now it's become so the standard.
I wanted to build the greatest race car the world's ever seen, to win the 24 hours of Le Mans. What's it take?
Well, it takes something money can't buy.
Money can buy speed.
What in about speed? You need a pure racer behind the wheel of your car. That's Ken Miles.
I don't trust him an inch.
We heard he's difficult.
No, Ken's a puppy dog.
I definitely want an anamorphic look for it, but I also wanted a larger format camera. And partially because I had experimented and had some experience with the 65 and the Spheros and really liked that. And it just felt this movie was, one of these sort of Grand Prix 70 millimeter, Technicolor. I mean, just felt like it needed that. It needed that kind of feel. Initially, because of that larger format, we were looking for sphericals that cover. We were kind of surprised that they covered.
Because a lot of the lenses that you started initially are some of the vintage lenses that were intended for the larger, like 5-perf 65 or even VistaVision, which were kind of more popular back then.
I go, that's a beautiful quality in the larger format, but I still want the anamorphic characteristics as well. And I go, it's too bad, we can't use them. And I remember I was standing there and you go, well, I can expand them. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, I can make them cover. I'm like, but are you sure? Can you really make him? Can you really do that? Because he's always full of ideas and comes up and always wants to try things. And I'm like, but don't have a lot of time, and we start shooting pretty soon. And so you went straight to it and gave it a shot.
Your Ford versus Ferrari is the first time we made anamorphic lenses cover the giant 25 millimeter height. Because even in Nebraska, I remember the 25 millimeter lens was kind of a sticking point because you didn't want to be too bendy. And then
because I have these graphic landscapes. And I've even done it where I would switch to spherical lenses for the wides and put some characteristics of the anamorphic back in, but less extreme, like in post.
Yeah, so the 28, what we did is when we expanded it, we actually added a little bit of positive distortion, which canceled it out and gave you more straight vertical lines. But then with the anamorphic, we always leave a little barrel distortion to kind of give you that kind of grand,
and that's
grand
nice.
look. So we calmed it down. And
Oh, okay.
but that was part of the learning
He's
process.
like sneaky. Always does little things.
I was using it as my guinea pig. Yeah. That's why I said Phedon series. Okay, is he mad or is he happy? Yeah. So the one thing we found out though is when we added the extra negative power to it, it really gave the anamorphic a look that we hadn't seen before, and that's what really impressed us, is that the out-of-focus characteristics were almost more enhanced.
Yeah.
And that was the great surprise that kind of really added a lot of heat to just, this is something that really we should look into more
combo,
seriously, yeah.
Often we would actually put on a C40 expanded, and then, you know, that had often like these bigger, it had more glooming, softer, bigger flare, and it was too much because it's hard to sort of maneuver it off somebody's face, and very beautiful also, but, you know, sometimes it was just too much, and then we'd, you know, just let's look at the T, you know, let's look at the B, and then we'd actually it's almost like trying different degrees of diffusion filter, or because there was a lot of low light day exteriors, we ended up using the T's because, again, also the T's didn't seem too aggressively sharp or anything.
It kind of muted down the sterility of the lenses.
This sequence here was shot in a 20-minute window. We wanted all the airport landing lights, and you know, really didn't want to go back and break it up over 2 days. So I'm like,
you got it all in 20 minutes?
We put a Oculus head on the dolly, and so we knew we wouldn't have time to lay track. Every setup, like, you know, 1 or 2 takes and then move on. I mean, it was, but here is something where, you know, the large format, and I mean, this even on film would have been extremely difficult. I mean, the negative would have become very thin and the black's very milky. And
with the large format, that 40 is acting more like a 30 something.
Right.
But you get all the magnification of the 40 with the out of focus characteristics, where you are separating the foreground and background, and you can even see how your bokeh is just breaking down really beautifully. Where on traditional 35 it wouldn't be as exaggerated, I don't think. So on this shot with the illumination change, was that the lens, or did you add the darkening?
No, what you're seeing here, like normally I do vignettes and I do maybe some sky grads, but that's that
was the lens.
And I embraced them. This is where I was saying I was just placing lights on the runway and just photographing.
That was the big
sources.
condor sources there?
No, those are just little parkans on the ground, and there's some night stuff. You see, look how close we cut behind this car. I mean,
very close. Yeah. I mean, that lens on Christian Bale's face must have been just inches.
Yeah.
And they just sucked into the windshield?
Oh yeah, he's not acting that.
That he was genuinely scared for his life. Good that he was going so fast.
It's most effective and most dynamic when you are close to the cars and low to the ground and feel the asphalt and have, you know, foreground cars wiping through frame. And it lends to our style of lensing with James Mangold, which is generally living on a wider lens even when we do close-ups. And again, with the cars, you know, we were, you know, always trying to be very close to the physical action, almost like we are to the characters. And, you know, it's like also we feel there's an intimacy that you get by being physically close to an actor. So when we're Christian Bale in the car, it's not a long lens through the windshield or through a side mount. We're like right there, and you know, and then again, you know, because of your wider lens, you get all this interactive light that's coming through the window and get flares and kicks off the dashboard and off the steering wheel and all that. So it's all sort of a byproduct of lensing like that. I mean, it was risky, you know. I mean, you know, you're starting $100 million movie with, you know, and you're shooting principal photography with lenses that have never really been shot.
We basically threw forward a new technology at this pretty high profile show. Fortunately it worked out because, well, we're here interviewing, right?
Anyway.
Yeah, so.